Okay, so on the college entrance ACT English test, it's different from the reading test. Okay, the English test has more grammar on it than it does reading. What we've been talking about so far is the reading test. Now we're moving into the English test. So on the ACT College Entrance English test, there are 5 passages, 15 questions for each of the 5 passages for a total of 75 questions. Okay, I'm pretty sure that you have 40 or 45 minutes to answer these 75 questions. On ACT Aspire that you're going to take next week, you're going to have 45 minutes. You're not going to have quite as many questions as the ACT College Entrance. Okay, but the content of the questions that you do have is very, very similar. I know I've mentioned this several times, but ACT Aspire test and ACT College Entrance test are made by the same company, ACT. Okay, 3 reasons to love the English section of the ACT College Entrance section. Okay, it's the first test that you're going to take when you go in to take the ACT. So hopefully your brain isn't completely dead yet. Okay, many of the questions are based on just a few punctuation and grammar rules. So if you know those few rules, you will probably be successful because they just repeat those same rules throughout the test. Okay, some major do's and don'ts for success on the English portion. Do know the difference between a sentence and a sentence fragment. A sentence has a subject and a verb and expresses a complete thought. Okay, an example of a fragment. She, acting like an infant, crying and whining. That is a fragment. It does not have a subject and a verb, and it is not a complete thought. Okay, sentence. Complete sentence. I swim. Subject, verb, complete thought. So do not fall into the trap of thinking a sentence is not a fragment if it's long. The length of a sentence does not matter. It could be a fragment or it could be a complete sentence without length being a factor. So be sure that you're looking for subject, verb, complete thought. That's what makes a complete sentence. Okay, do pick the clearest, most concise way of stating something. Shortest is best as long as you have a complete sentence. Do read to the end of a sentence before answering a question. This way you will be sure that you pick an answer that creates a complete sentence. So like in today's bell work, it's going to have an underlined portion of a sentence. You need to start at the beginning of that sentence and read all the way to the end of it to be sure that you're choosing the correct answer. Do test delete the underlined portion first. Delete the underlined portion is a right answer about 50% of the time. So don't automatically write it off. 50% of the time, delete the underlined portion is correct. Remember though, that means it's a wrong answer 50% of the time as well. So don't just use it as one of your guessing techniques. Do be careful when selecting an answer with the word being in it, as it is seldom correct. I have no idea why. That's just a rule. So be careful selecting an answer with the word being in it. Do look for wrong answers. Wrong answers are often much easier to find than right ones. Unless the right answer comes to you immediately, eliminate the wrong answers first. Process of elimination. Don't jump from question to question in the English section. Read the entire passage. However, you are often reading for technical issues, not content. Regarding content, you only need a very basic idea of what's going on to answer the content questions. Don't be afraid to pick no change. It is a correct answer as often as any other answer. So it said at the beginning of this that the English test basically repeats the same grammar rules. We're going to go over those few grammar rules very quickly. Okay, you guys should know most of these already. This should just be a review. But it's very, very important for you to basically have memorized these few grammar rules if you want to get your ACT English score high. Every complete sentence must contain a subject, a verb, and express a complete thought, which we just talked about. Short groups of words can be sentences. For example, she likes milk. This is a complete sentence. She is the subject, likes is the verb, and the author's thought is complete. Very long groups of words might not be complete sentences. Example, although the weather was rainy and more clouds were gathering in the gray overcast sky. This is a sentence fragment. The thought is incomplete and leaves the reader dangling. If you are unsure whether a group of words is a complete sentence, ask yourself the following series of questions. Is it finished? If not, as in the second example above, you are dealing with a fragment. If it is finished, move on to question 2. Is it a complete thought? Again, if the answer is no, the sentence cannot be complete. If the answer is yes, move on to question 3. Question 3, is it a complete sentence? The answer is either yes or no. Unless the answer to all 3 questions is yes, it cannot be a complete sentence. Okay, there are 2 main rules for dashes used on the ACT. Okay, number 1, the dash, like a comma, is used to mark an interruption. Example, the Chicago Marathon, dash, a race of endurance, strength, and skill, dash, is difficult to complete. The 2 dashes or 2 commas can be used interchangeably. However, never use one of each. We went over that in bell work today. Number 2, the dash can also be used to stress a word or phrase at the end of a sentence. Example, Danny's hair is unlike anyone else's in the family, dash, thick and dark. So those are the main 2 dash rules that show up on the English section. Okay, there are also 2 semicolon rules. The first one, the semicolon is used to separate complete sentences. Okay, those complete sentences need to be closely related to each other in content, though. If they're not, you need to just end the sentence and start a new sentence. For example, Shannon practiced diligently for the ACT, semicolon, she wanted to maximize her score. Don't forget the semicolon is the one that looks like a period and then a comma. We've gone over colons and semicolons before, so hopefully this is just a reminder of this information. Rule number 2, the semicolon is used before connectives like however, therefore, and since when you have 2 separate sentences. Example, I enjoy living in a small community, semicolon, however, comma, the neighbors are often too nosy. Don't forget, if you have one of those connective words that you are using with a semicolon before it, you're always going to put a comma after that connective word. There are 3 colon rules that you need to know. 1, the colon is used after a complete sentence, followed by a summary list. Example, I have many hobbies, colon, golfing, rock climbing, sailing, and windsurfing. So the structure of this is complete sentence, colon, list. The second colon rule is being used at the end of a sentence followed by an afterthought. Example, Japan has a high literacy rate, colon, 99%. The structure of this is complete sentence, colon, afterthought. Third rule, the colon is also used to separate two complete sentences when the second sentence explains or restates an idea in the first sentence. Example, these seat covers are the most durable kind, colon, they are reinforced with double stitching and covered with a heavy plastic coating. The structure of this is complete sentence, colon, explanation. Okay, possessives. An apostrophe is used to show ownership. If there is one owner, use apostrophe S. Example, Roxanne, apostrophe S. Roxanne's car is brand new. You have one owner. So apostrophe S. You guys need to be sure that you're paying attention because I get the feeling that some of you are not. I would not be sitting here telling you all of this if it was not important. I know it's boring, but that I just can't help. Grammar is boring. But you need to know these rules. So try your hardest to pay attention. Number 2, if there is more than one owner, use S apostrophe. For example, 10 boys' bikes were stolen. You have more than one owner because you have 10 boys. So you're going to put S apostrophe at the end of boys. Third rule, words that are plural without adding the S form the possessive by adding apostrophe S. Example, women apostrophe S. You guys see how the word women is plural? What is the singular of women? Woman. Okay, so woman is singular, women is plural. If you have a word that is already plural, like woman versus women, you just add an apostrophe S. Same goes for men's, people's, children's. Okay, IT apostrophe S is always it is. One more time. IT apostrophe S is always it is. It's with no apostrophe equals one owner. ITS apostrophe, this is not a word. Do not ever choose this. It's not a word, it's always going to be wrong. However, they will give you this as an option. So if you see ITS apostrophe, automatically know that that is the wrong answer. Don't choose it. Subject-verb agreement. Always check for agreement. Within a sentence, a singular subject must be followed by a singular verb, and a plural subject must be followed by a plural verb. Example, the stack of books is on the floor. In this sentence, stack is the subject. Stack is singular. So the verb is correct because it is singular. What you don't want to do here is get confused about the subject of the sentence. The stack of books is on the floor. Of books is a prepositional phrase. You're never going to have a subject inside of a prepositional phrase. Therefore, books cannot be your subject. Stack is your subject. Be careful. Verbs are not made plural just by putting an S on the end. If you want a singular verb, put the word he or she in front of it and make sure it works. If you want a plural verb, put the word they in front of it and make sure it works. Example, he sits. They sit. One of the ACT's most common questions begins with a singular subject and is followed by several prepositional phrases with plural nouns and then a verb. The verb must be singular to agree with the sentence's singular subject. So once again, do not mistake something inside a prepositional phrase as the subject of the sentence. Example, the color of the glass in the panes of glass in the window of the nearby houses is actually a reflection of the sun's rays. That's overkill with prepositional phrases. That's what you're going to be seeing. And they're going to want you to know what the subject of that sentence is. Of the glass is a prepositional phrase. We can mark it out. It's not going to have the subject. In the panes, prepositional phrase, not going to have the subject. Of glass, prepositional phrase, not going to have the subject. In the windows, prepositional phrase, not going to have the subject. Of the nearby houses, prepositional phrase, not going to have the subject. So when we take out all of those prepositional phrases, what we're left with is the color is actually a reflection of the sun's rays. And of the sun's rays is another prepositional phrase. So if we mark that out, we're left with the color is actually a reflection. It's much, much easier to determine the subject when all of those prepositional phrases are gone. So the subject here would be what? Color. Therefore, you have to have the singular verb is. You cannot say the color are actually a reflection. But if you mistake something inside a prepositional phrase as your subject, that could be easy to do. So be sure that you're aware. Subject pronoun agreement. Within a sentence, a singular subject must be followed by a singular pronoun, and a plural subject must be followed by a plural pronoun. Example, each of the boys took his seat on the bus. This is another one where you need to get rid of that prepositional phrase. Of the boys is a prepositional phrase. Okay, so your subject is actually going to be each, which is singular. So you're going to need to follow that with his, not their. You cannot say each of the boys took their seat on the bus. That is incorrect. Although that is very, very common for us to do. That is a very easy mistake to make. So be sure that if you have a singular subject, you are following it with a singular pronoun. Okay, ACT English scores are broken down into two categories. Usage and mechanics, which we just covered, the main rules that go with that, and rhetorical skills. Here are the types of rhetorical questions. Delete. If a question asks about deleting a phrase, make it a true or false question. Pick the answer that expresses a true statement about the phrase they want to delete. That's a tip for that type of question. Introductory phrases. If a question asks you to pick the sentence that best introduces a paragraph, read the next sentence or two. Think about what you would say and then go to the answer choices. There should only be one answer choice that has anything to do with what you predicted. That's a strategy. Be careful to only read one or two sentences. If you read the whole paragraph, you might then pick an answer choice that has to do with a smaller detail in the paragraph rather than the overall topic. Example, William Shakespeare's plays have been performed all over the world. If the sentence above is the next sentence that you read, then there should only be one answer choice that has to do with Shakespeare's plays. Add. Only add if it proves relevant to the main idea and is not redundant information. What does redundant mean? Repetitive. Illustrate support. If a question asks which of the answers best illustrates or supports something, pick the answer that gives the most specific details or examples, not least. If a question asks which of the following is not acceptable or which is least acceptable, the important thing to remember is that 3 answers will be correct. So eliminate the 3 correct answers and pick the remaining one. We ran across this yesterday in Bell Work and it got a lot of us. The except. Even though the test writers capitalize the word not or least in the question, it is often helpful to circle or underline it as you read to remind yourself that you will need to switch gears and look for the wrong answer rather than the right one. So this right here, although it took a minute to go through, these are some of the pinpointed grammar rules that you need to know to be successful on the English portion. So if you can take it upon yourself as a self-disciplined pre-AP student to memorize these rules, you will be successful on the English portion of the ACT. Just plain and simple. Y'all have any